Okay, well, let's get into it for today. Good afternoon, everyone. Great to have you all with us for our first ACDC coaching calibration webinar for 2022. We would have loved to seen you a little bit earlier in February, but between taking a break and being a very busy start to the year, it's pushed us out until now. And now that we're in March, the year already feels full again. So thanks for taking the time to join us today. For those here for the first time, my name's David McQueen and I'm one of the directors at Grist. And as usual, we're lucky to be joined by Kate Golby, one of the amazing senior behavioural analysts at Grist. Hey, welcome, Kate. How are you? How's the start of your year been?
Yeah, it's been good, Dave. Yes, thank you. Good to be back. It's always a bit of a slow start for me, switching my brain from holiday mode to back to work, but I'm ready. I'm in and I'm ready to take on 2022.
Good. Yeah, it's good to be back in the full swing, hey. Hey, one of the things that has been keeping us really busy recently is helping our clients to maintain a good coaching operating rhythm. So I'm not sure whether it's part of the Great Resignation or it's just that the rate of change is increasing, but whatever it is, there seems to be a lot of pressure on coaching time right now. Leaders seem to be busy either recruiting or implementing digital transformation projects, or maybe it's just finding some kind of balance in the new norm of hybrid working. But what we're hearing is that how hard it is to actually keep coaching time going right now.
Yeah, what we do know is that dropping coaching sessions with the teams just brings a host of other issues like, speed to competency and even attrition. And that's one of the great things about this ACDC model that we keep talking about, is that it can work so effectively in shorter conversations. And so it's so easy just to slot into a really busy schedule.
Yeah, that's a great point, Kate, because if you do have competing priorities, it doesn't mean that you've got to stop coaching. It could just mean that your coaching sessions may need to be shorter. In practice, we actually find that shorter, more frequent coaching conversations are actually more effective when coaching just about anything. Yeah. So today's ACDC webinar may come at a great time, as we're going to take a deeper look at some of the small coaching behaviours that you have to nail to really turn the talk into their walk. And so gaining a real commitment, it's crucial when trying to develop capability or drive performance. When your people have to be deliberately practicing in order to get better, when you're not there watching them or guiding them, then you have to be really good at getting a good commitment. So making sure that they feel 100% clear and confident about what needs to be done is the hallmark of a mature and seasoned coach. Your effectiveness in gaining commitments can be measured in your goal completion rates. Do you actually know how many goals are actually completed from your coaching sessions? In our client work, at the lower end, we see that only even 20 or 30% of goals set in coaching sessions are actually being achieved. Imagine that and the impact on your business. That's a lot of wasted coaching time. At the higher end, we can see around 80% of goals and actions being achieved. And you can actually feel the difference in culture, in team energy, when you see completion rates that high. Confidence is up and so is team engagement, which of course translates into customer and sales metrics as well. So if you have coaching sessions where not much changes, today is going to help. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with a quick refresh of the ACDC coaching model, and then Kate's going to take us through some examples of good and not so good coaching behaviours to help gain commitment. And before we finish, as we normally do, we're going to set a small micro behavioural goal based on coaching for you to implement into your conversations. Along the way, you can post any questions that you have in the chat, and we'll also give us your thoughts using the annotation tool. So you can find it by moving your mouse up to the top of the screen until you see this navigation bar appear, and you can click on annotate, choose a symbol, and you'll be able to make your mark on the screen. Okay, so what's ACDC? Well, besides it being arguably the best rock band Australia has ever produced, ACDC is an intent-based leadership conversation framework. It's a conversation structure that you can use in any of your leadership conversations. But obviously, it's great for tactical behavioural coaching conversations. But it's just as effective in your team meetings, or group training, or upskilling sessions. It's even terrific when used as a structure to provide great feedback.
Yeah, and so each of the phases of the conversation have their own intent statement, which is essentially, why the phase is important. And it guides you to what you're trying to achieve at each of the phase in your coaching conversation. And then each phase is then broken down into 5 small coaching behaviours, highlighting the key moments of each effective ACDC coaching session.
Yeah. So these 20 ACDC micro behaviours have been selected out of hundreds and hundreds of different behaviours that occur in coaching conversations. And having assessed tens of thousands of conversations over many years, these 20 behaviours represent the key moments that really matter when coaching people to change the way they do things, develop their capability, and drive high levels of performance. So today we're going to dive into that last phase of the ACDC conversation, being the commitment. And all of the previous phases have been leading and guiding us to this endpoint. And if we've been able to effectively perform the agenda phase, the current state, and desired state phases, the commitment phase is ideally nothing more than just a summary that quantifies the conversation that we've had. The ultimate purpose or intent of the commitment phase is to gain a commitment from our team member to demonstrate the desired behaviours that have been identified. It's a commitment to deliberately practice the behaviours while you're not around. It's a commitment to keep trying the behaviour, even if it doesn't work so well to start with. And it's a commitment to consciously think about the impact of the behaviour on that outcome that they're trying to achieve. So this is the moment where ownership is transferred to the person that you're coaching. So as a coach, it's our responsibility to make sure that goals and commitments that are being agreed to are as simple and as easy to do as possible. If there is a lack of clarity or some uncertainty, it's much more likely that the goals or actions will not be completed. So let's have a look at the 5 coaching micro behaviours of the commitment phase. Most of us are going to be very familiar with the SMART way of setting goals. You make sure that the goal is specific and measurable, and you make sure it's achievable and realistic, and lastly, it has a time frame. But at GRIST, we agree completely with the intent of SMART, which is really to make it as easy as possible to help people achieve their goals. Unfortunately, we don't see or hear SMART done well all that often. One of the activities that we do with our clients is to review the documented outputs of coaching sessions. And if you ever get the chance to go back and review the last 5 goals or actions that were set from your coaching session. And it's a really quick way to see how good you are at coaching SMART goals and actions. But often what we see is that they're quite vague and conceptual, or they're KPI-based goals that lack the specificity to be implemented effectively. So ACDC's 5 commitment behaviours make it easier to get SMART right every time. The first behaviour is behaviour. That is the specific thing that you are going to do or say differently. Next is quantity and date. How many times will you do or say the behaviour in a given time frame? Is it 4 times per day or twice per week? Next comes the measure, and this is important because what's different in tactical or behavioural coaching is that you're measuring that the behaviour is practiced and not the outcome of the behaviour, and there's a big difference here that we'll talk about. Next, it's important to check in that your team members' levels of confidence, that their commitments will actually get done. So if they're not confident about getting it done, then why would you be happy to lock in that goal? Too often coaches kind of hear what they want to hear, and they finish their coaching session happy that their team member has agreed to what they had in mind from the start. We don't want to do that. So, and the last behaviour is all about support. It's a proactive offer of help from us as coaches to check in and let our team member know that they're not on their own. So there you got it, Kate. There are 5 behaviours that we're going to jump into today. I'm looking forward to learning a little bit more about how you assess what's good and not so good in these behaviours.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Dave. All right, so there we have the final stage of our ACDC coaching session. We're on the home stretch now. We've put in all of the hard yards, finish line is in sight. So up until this point, in your coaching session, there's been a lot of talk from both you and your team member. Hopefully there has been. That's what we want to see, a real interaction, a real conversational session. But now it's time to turn that talk into a walk. Because, what happens if we don't start walking that line, Dave?
Nothing changes, Kate.
Nothing at all. All right, you got it. So that's what we're up to trying to do, right? Make some change. That's what we want. The final chapter of the coaching model brings that insights and learnings that we've had in the previous phases in the session, and it puts it into future practice. So let's start breaking down and see what we can do to make that change happen. Okay, so by now we know that great coaches can assist team members to be aware of their current behaviours and outcomes and work with them through that desired state to pinpoint new behaviours required to reach a desired outcome. And to turn that talk into a walk, a coach needs to guide their team member again to set a clear and specific goal for that desired behaviour. Setting a single behavioural goal that is small enough that a team member can put it into practice on the job right away creates a manageable focus for a team member, greatly increasing their chances of success. And it also allows their coach to track their improvement more accurately. Now, without setting a goal, a coach and team member really miss an opportunity to put their discussion points into action and make it clear for the team member what's required of them once they leave the coaching session. Let's listen to an example of how this is done really well.
Brilliant. So what's our behaviour?
Introduce process.
And what specifically are we doing to adapt it?
It's going to be before ID questions, and it's going to be really clear, succinct steps.
Okay. Really clear, mention the behaviour. Let's listen to an alternate version where it's not quite done so clearly.
So, Kez, can you give me a recap of what we're working on?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so it's just, I'm going to work harder and not get so distracted after lunch.
Great stuff.
Kate used the term behavioural goal a few times. Is it essential to only set behavioural goals?
Yeah, so behavioural goals like seeking to engage with your clients rather than outcome-based goals like maybe having happy clients, it really just minimises the chances of those peripheral factors impacting the success of the goal. And the goal's success is in the hands purely of that team member. So a simple way to think about it about coaching to a behaviour is, can we hear or see a team member do it? And that's a good way to work out if you've set a behavioural goal.
Yeah, great. It's quite small, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. So to test you out on that, I guess, that behaviour, I know we usually leave our activity to the end of the phase, but I just want to check if you're listening. So I'm going to put an activity right up front here. And this game is called Outcome or Behaviour. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put up a goal. And what I want you to tell me is this goal a behavioural goal or is it an outcome goal? And I want to use your annotation tools like we just practiced up front. And you let me know if this is an outcome or a behavioural goal. Here we go. First one is customer advocacy. Is that a behaviour or is that an outcome? Fantastic. Okay, we've got a few, one for behaviour and everyone else has gone outcomes. Let's have a look. Yeah, that's an outcome. So it's something that's, perhaps our end goal, our overarching goal. That's what we're ultimately trying to achieve. But can we actually practice this? No. So we need to break it down further. What are the behaviours that go into increasing customer advocacy? And that would be our behaviours. Let's try again. Summarising outcomes. Behaviour or outcome, what do we think? Oh, overwhelming response here. Behaviours. Let's have a look. Spot on, guys. That's something that your team member can practice. Building rapport. What do we think? Behaviour or outcome? Okay, a bit of a mixed bag here. All right, let's have a look. This one's actually an outcome. So it's not something that we can ultimately practice. And our last one is seeking to engage. Is this a behaviour or is this an outcome? Okay, looks like we know our behaviours when we see them. So yeah, that one is a behaviour. And it's those last two almost go hand in hand. You know, seeking to engage with a client or a customer can be one of those behaviours that can contribute to building that rapport, which is more of our broad overarching goal that we're looking to try to achieve.
Yeah, you often hear, you know, and we see a lot of goals around building rapport, and then when the person goes out to the customer or they get on their phone, they go, but how do I do that? What do I actually say or do to do that? Whereas seeking to engage is one of those things that you actually seek to engage on something on a personal level, right? So it's much more doable, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you can see the outcome-based goal, the building rapport, go up as those behavioural-based goals are also becoming more frequent in the conversations. Yeah. All right, well, let's jump back into our behaviours now and have a look at our next behaviour, which is quantity and date. So setting boundaries for a goal creates clarity and certainty for both team members and coaches. Making as many variables as concrete as possible creates a clear set of expectations. And committing to and then achieving measurable goals within specified timeframes will improve team members' focus and learning. Without a set quantity or deadline in place, flags marking the success constantly move, and determining whether the goal is actually achieved becomes challenging for both parties. With those flags wavering, so does team member confidence and motivation. So we want to get these as clear and specific as possible. Let's have a listen to how this might sound.
So given that it's 1-ish o'clock, how many calls do you think you'll have for the rest of this afternoon?
Well, factoring in my mid-afternoon lemongrass and ginger tea, I'll probably get at least 10. Let's just say 10 total.
Yeah, that's perfect. And so out of those 10 by the end of the day, on how many can you seek permission to proceed?
I think I'd probably say 8. That's actually my lucky number.
Yeah, it's nice and clear, isn't it? Like it's really specific about when it's going to be done and by when. So we really like that. But Kate, you know, what does it sound like for coaches who don't work in the contact centre?
Yeah, that's a really great point, Dave, because, you know, as we know, ACDC coaching can really be applied to, you know, a massive variety of different environments. So if you were taking that conversation into maybe a face-to-face client conversation, something like this could be used. You know, when would you like to catch up and check on this goal? That would work really well for the date. And then you could follow it up with something like, how many times will you nail this behaviour by then? And that would take care of the quantity part. And this one can work in pretty much any situation, even in the call centre environment. And just remember that doing something once doesn't create a habit. We need to do it multiple times correctly. So we need to stumble and wobble, but soon we'll be, you know, walking confidently.
It's so true, Kate, because, you know, it's repetition and practice that builds mastery. So it makes sense that our goals must include the quantity of repetition or practice required. You know, so that's a great tip, because if you can't set the quantity or frequency of practice, then the goal most likely isn't behavioral in the first place. I mean, how many times can you practice conversion or practice NPS? It's just not effective behavioral coaching.
Yeah, absolutely. Spot on.
Cool.
Right. So the next behaviour we've got here is measure. Now, you probably have heard of Peter Drucker, who is arguably the godfather of the management consulting industry. And he said that you can't improve what you can't measure. So that's why we've got our next behaviour, and it's appropriately titled Measure. So by setting a tracker or a recorder of how the behaviour is being displayed ensures the progress has been established. Evidence is vital to building team member self-awareness and provides a clear starting point for the next conversation. Without this, a coach and a team member's understanding of how they performed at the evaluation stage can be quite inaccurate. The distance between actual and perceived performance can stifle productivity and future coaching. So team members become less accountable or even forgetful regarding their deadlines and quantities. Let's have a listen to how this sounds.
All right, so we know what, we know when and how many, but how are we going to keep track?
Yeah, look, I'm really not sure.
Well, is there something that we use already that you could maybe adapt?
Meeting tracker? Yeah, of course. I'll add a little box to the meeting tracker that we use already, and I can note down whether I did the behaviour or not.
Sounds perfect. Could you send me those meeting notes at the end of the week?
Yeah, I can do.
It does. It sounds really good. It is quite measurable. You know, in my experience, measure can be a tricky one, and the main reason is that we want to slip back into measuring the outcome rather than the behaviour. So for many of us, it's actually easy to measure the outcome because it comes in our daily or weekly or even monthly reporting. You know, the broader the outcome, the broader the outcome, it's already become clear during our coaching sessions, you know, that we've already got that. Yeah. So in every phase of the ACDC conversation, we're already discussing the link between behaviour and outcome. In the agenda phase, we're talking about the link between today's coaching session and the bigger, broader, overarching goal. In the current state phase, we're discussing the link between current behaviour and current outcome achieved. And in the desired state, we're discussing the link between the new and desired behaviours and achieving the better or more desired outcome. So, you know, there's already a clear link between the behaviours we're focusing on and the bigger outcome established all the way through the ACDC conversation. So the experienced and more mature coach doesn't fall into the trap of not measuring the behavioural input. And you know, you've also got to consider here the impact on your team member. You know, so what do you think puts more pressure on the person that you're coaching? Let's double conversion or NPS, or let's double the number of times that you do this one behaviour. You know, when a new team member comes out of induction, you know, is it better to focus on the behaviours that deliver the performance or just focus on their performance? Yeah. So how much pressure your team member feels is actually directly related to, you know, staff attrition. So coaching this well right now is really important.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think questions like, you know, how are you going to show me that you've practiced the behaviours, and maybe how could you measure the number of times you can do this, can really help make it easier. There are many ways that they measure behaviour. As coaches, you just want to be confident that they're clear on what needs to be done, what needs to be practiced, and how often. And so we'll measure how many times you ask the customers how satisfied they were with the level of service today, rather than measuring the customer satisfaction score or the NPS. You know, don't get me wrong, you know, their overarching goals that they may want to improve their customer satisfaction and NPS, but we're setting goals on the behaviours, and we're actually measuring the doing. You know, we're measuring how often they're doing those behaviours that go into creating that better outcome, not the KPI itself.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a look at another behaviour. Confidence. Okay, this is your team members' moment to be honest about what they can achieve. It's an opportunity to reassess the goal to ensure its appropriateness. A commitment confidence check protects team members from underestimating or even, you know, overestimating how much they can actually achieve within the given timeframes or limits. And therefore, it needs to be done after the rest of the goal components have been put into place. So without checking how achievable a team member thinks the goal is, the coach may be making an assumption about the feasibility of a goal and won't have an opportunity to make any necessary tweaks to ensure the success for the team member.
So on a scale of 2 to 9, how confident are you that you can achieve this behaviour 5 times before the end of the day?
2 and 9. That's a bit different.
Well, no one picks 1 or 10 ever, do they?
Well, you're so right. I'm feeling about an 8. I think I feel really well prepared, and that's all thanks to you, Christy.
Oh, hey, that's what I'm here for.
These are real life coaching conversations. So, 2 to 9, why not? That's a really interesting sort of scale. Okay, in my experience, I hear a lot of coaches finish their coaching sessions with something like, how are you feeling about that? Does that do the trick in your mind, Kate?
So what we're looking for here is we're looking for a really overt question specifically about the goal. So are you confident you can do that? Or, out of 10, how confident are you? How are you feeling is not quite a confidence question. It doesn't specifically relate to the commitment either. So it wouldn't quite tick the box in this.
Yeah, because confidence it's a qualitative thing, isn't it? And it does become a little bit hard to measure. And that's why using a scale like 1 to 10 can really help. It gives you an insight into how likely the goal will get done. So if you're looking at confidence levels of 7s and 8s and 9s, you're looking like it's going to be pretty clear. The goal is going to be pretty easy to do. But what if you're hearing 1s, 2s, or even mid-ranges like 5 or 6? What would you kind of suggest here, Kate?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things you could do to tweak, to increase someone's confidence that they can get it done. The first thing would be to check the behaviour, make sure it's small, make sure you don't have a concept or a KPI rather than a behaviour. If it is a behaviour and the confidence levels are still right down there in the 1s, 2s, 3s, you can consider lowering maybe the quantity of times the behaviour is going to be practiced or demonstrated. You could also push out some time frames a little or find an easier way to measure it. All of those things can work towards building a team member's confidence.
Okay, so if the behaviour that I'm going to practice is adding my years of experience to my customer credibility statement, for example, and I'm going to do that 10 times by the end of the day, what you're saying is that it could make it easier if they committed to doing it 6 or 7 times a day rather than 10 times a day.
Yeah, exactly.
Or it could be that, we're committed to 10 times over the next 3 days or something like that, right?
Yeah, spot on. And you could a good tip is to maybe even use a percentage. So they're not necessarily going for a number per day, which would be affected by other circumstances, call volumes, meeting regularity. If you put a percentage on it, then those things are taken out of the equation, and it's just what percentage of times can you perform that.
Yeah, great. I think if you remember at the start of today's conversation, we shared a statistic with you around goal completion rates, and that we often saw were somewhere between 20 or 40%. So, but imagine the impact on your team if you could improve the number of goals completed from your coaching sessions. What impact would that have on your team? It's not only a positive impact on the performance and team engagement, but it's a significant impact on our credibility as a leader. Something so small as checking the confidence levels can make a massive difference to the number of goals that your teams achieve every single week.
Yeah, little things can make a big difference. Even Usain Bolt had to learn how to walk first, and now look at him. So,
Sorry.
Yeah. All right, let's keep moving to our last behaviour for today: support. All right, what we know is that any behavioural change feels more achievable when someone's alongside you helping out. If a coach doesn't explicitly mention that they're along with a team member for the journey, that behaviour change can feel like a heavier weight on a team member. So this behaviour fosters collaboration between the coach and the team member outside of just this individual coaching session. they're ready to help support if or when the team member faces any troubles, and also there to help them celebrate the wins. Without this support, a team member can feel less motivated to achieve the behavioural change and may feel less accountable as they don't have the person checking in on their progress. A coach asking what support is needed or if any support is needed isn't enough on its own. It needs to be proactive, saying how they will support or provide feedback to the team member. Have a listen to how that might sound.
How about I send you some emails at the start of the day for the rest of the week as a bit of a reminder?
Oh, could you? I'd lose my head if it wasn't fully attached.
Happy to. And we can catch up Friday afternoon to see how you went.
Yeah, it's a good commitment and support. I think many years ago, we used to call this type of behaviour commit rather than support, where the coach made the commitment to follow up. And if I remember the data correctly, back then it showed that, coaches were like 200% more likely to achieve the goal when the leader committed to some type of follow-up on that activity. So, I don't think we measure it quite the same way nowadays, but the point remains valid, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think even at a minimum, even the minimum you do is to check in, what happened in your next coaching session. So committing to provide some kind of feedback on the goal in the next session. That would be still a show of support that lets the team member know that the coach will be checking in on them. Let's face it, if we hear a fair bit of this, and if you don't check in, your coaching sessions, feel just like a repeat. There's no narrative, there's no continuity, a bit like 50 First Dates. There's no connection between them.
Great point.
Okay, so time for our favourite part of the session. It's test time. So let's have a listen to a full commitment phase. Keep an ear out for what you can hear and maybe what might be missing. Dave, have you got a pen and paper ready to note down what you hear?
All ready to go, Kate.
All right, I'll pop up the behaviours there so you can keep them in mind. Jot down what you hear and what you don't hear, and then after the recording's finished, I want to see it on the screen.
Well done on your role play. It was a really great example of summarising all the information we gathered before moving on to the solution.
Thank you. It was really great to work it out in an example like that.
Yeah, let's set up that goal now.
Yeah, perfect. I think the summary will be a great goal for me this week.
I agree. So how many appointments do you have booked in this week?
Well, I know there's definitely 10, but there are always some extras that squeeze in here and there.
Oh, that's right. There are always a few surprises.
Exactly.
So out of those 10 that we know for sure, how many of those will you incorporate that new summary?
Look, I'd love to say all of them, but realistically, I'd say about 8 out of 10, just because I want to set something that I know I can achieve.
Yeah, that's a great point. We want to start on the right foot. So 8 out of 10 by the end of next week. Do you feel confident with that goal?
Yeah, I do. I think it's really reasonable.
Yeah, great. And look, I'll check in throughout the week and see how you're going. And if you need any help, you just shout out, yeah?
Thank you. I definitely will.
It's a nice little tie up to the end of the conversation. So let me know what you heard. Was it a perfect commitment? Was there anything missing?
Sounded pretty good.
It did, didn't it? Right. Wow. Okay, cool. Looks like got a few there thinking that was the perfect commitment. So let's go in and have a listen to it again, and I'll pop up the audio and the text as we hear it, and we'll see what might have been missing, if anything. Don't want to give it away. All right. All right, here we go.
Well done on your role play. It was a really great example of summarising all the information we gathered before moving on to the solution.
Thank you. It was really great to work it out in an example like that.
Yeah, let's set up that goal now.
Yeah, perfect. I think the summary will be a great goal for me this week.
I agree. So how many appointments do you have booked in this week?
Well, I know there's definitely 10, but there are always some extras that squeeze in here and there.
Oh, that's right. There are always a few surprises.
Exactly.
So out of those 10 that we know for sure, how many of those will you incorporate that new summary?
Look, I'd love to say all of them, but realistically, I'd say about 8 out of 10 just because I want to set something that I know I can achieve.
Yeah, that's a great point. We want to start on the right foot. So 8 out of 10 by the end of next week. Do you feel confident with that goal?
Yeah, I do. I think it's really reasonable.
Yeah, great. And look, I'll check in throughout the week and see how you're going. And if you need any help, you just shout out, yeah?
Thank you. I definitely will.
Nicely done.
So who had their paying attention goggles on and noticed the behaviour that was missing? Dave, did you pick it?
I don't know. It sounded pretty good to me.
You did, but did you hear a measure?
A measure. What?
I didn't hear it. I heard them really clearly stating dates, time frames, quantities, support was there really strongly. But there was actually no way that either party, the coach or the team member, were actually going to measure how often that goal was being performed. They've got no evidence to back up that they actually did it.
Yes, I think I might have got confused because I heard that 8 out of 10, but that's not a measure, is it necessarily? Is it, or no, it's not the measure?
Yeah, so that's what we're looking at for the quantity. And
Yeah,
so
right.
how are you going to prove that you did it 8 out of 10 times? Are you going to check off a little tally on your notebook or something like that? So that's what we want to see, the measure.
Got it.
Yeah. All right, well, let's have another go. Listen to another little recording here of a full commitment phase. See what behaviours we can hear. There are those behaviours again, just to keep them in mind. Let's have a listen.
All right, we're almost there. The goal. What's our goal?
We're trying to reduce my hold time, really through resetting the inquiry so that I know what to look for in the system.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so let's say like 20 calls by the end of Friday. With that new restate, how many times do you think you could do that on the next 20 calls?
Well, I think now that I've got that phrasing down pat, I think probably 17 out of 20.
Yeah, look, I think that's great. And how will you know whether or not you've done it? Are you going to measure that?
I think I'll use a sticky note on the computer just like to note the times I did it and then put the call number with it.
Awesome. And you're confident with 17 out of 20?
Well, actually, I don't have that many phone shifts this week. So 17 might be a bit high.
Oh, sorry. What a goose I am. I didn't even think of that. Okay, so what's more reasonable for you?
Look, even if we change it to a percentage, so like if I do it maybe 80% of the time by Friday?
Yeah, that's a really good plan. Well, that's awesome. And you know what? Thanks for a great session today.
Oh, thank you. I guess I'll see you when I see you.
Yeah, bye.
I definitely heard the measure that time, Kate. The sticky notes, like on the thing in 17 out of 20. So both the quantity and the measure, I picked up clearly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. So you know it when you hear it, and it's such an easy one to do, but it's so often forgotten, the measure. What else did we hear? Okay, behaviour was there. Yeah, everyone heard that quantity, date, and measure. Good. Got some support. A little support. It did sound like it sounded like it ended a little bit awkwardly, didn't it?
It was a bit abrupt.
Yeah, so let's jump in and listen to it again, and we'll see how we went.
All right, we're almost there. The goal. What's our goal?
We're trying to reduce my hold time, really through resetting the inquiry so that I know what to look for in the system.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so let's say like 20 calls by the end of Friday. With that new restate, how many times do you think you could do that on the next 20 calls?
Well, I think now that I've got that phrasing down pat, I think probably 17 out of 20.
Yeah, look, I think that's great. And how will you know whether or not you've done it? Are you going to measure that?
I think I'll use a sticky note on the computer just like to note the times I did it and then put the call number with it.
Awesome. And you're confident with 17 out of 20?
Well, actually, I don't have that many phone shifts this week, so 17 might be a bit high.
Oh, sorry. What a goose I am. I didn't even think of that. Okay, so what's more reasonable for you?
Look, even if we change it to a percentage, so like if I do it maybe 80% of the time by Friday?
Yeah, that's a really good plan. Well, that's awesome. And you know what? Thanks for a great session today.
Oh, thank you. I guess I'll see you when I see you.
Yeah, bye.
And so that was a great example, like we spoke about before, Dave, of using the percentage instead of using an actual hard number for the quantity. And it worked really well in this situation where she didn't know how many conversations she was going to be having. It's a nice way of taking off a little bit of the pressure to make a team member much more confident in their goal.
Yeah, I got to say, there's something really nice about having the scripting here and then actually putting the behaviour as we're hearing the audio. It makes it really clear and easy to identify. So that's terrific. Thanks.
Excellent. Good to hear. Right. So what I've got next is a bit of data. So here is some data from the last 600 or so coaching sessions that we've assessed. What we can see here is that under 25% of coaching sessions are actually getting a perfect commitment phase. So all 5 commitment behaviours are included in their session. What we can see is that a further 30% are doing 4 of them. So that's, put them together, we're actually getting quite a decent percentage of our conversations with 4 or 5 behaviours included.
So that's still saying, though, that you're saying that 50% of conversations that we assessed weren't actually successful in gaining a strong commitment, right?
Yeah, so it's certainly trending in that direction. And if we look at full transparency, the 3-to-1 cohort is mostly comprised of 3 behaviours. So it's more common that there's 3 and above behaviours here, but there's still, it just illustrates that there's so much room for improvement, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. So let's have a look at exactly what behaviours are being missed. All right. So this data, I mean, it looks a little bit more encouraging, doesn't it? Right away we can see that nearly 80% of sessions end with a behavioural goal being set. And what it also shows there with that faint pink line I've got there is that a further 11% are setting outcome-based goals. That's the little dotted line there. And what that means is that with a little tweak to those 11% of the conversations, we could see over 90% of team members leaving with a behavioural goal. All they need to tweak is an outcome-based goal into a behavioural-based goal there. We can also see that confidence is the one that's not done consistently. We see that there's improvement possible in the commitment phase behaviours for most of them, but confidence in particular. Mm. So where do you think you are as a coach? Shall we set a goal around the commitment phase? What behaviour do you want to work on? Let's bring up our little goal setter. If you have the gist, you can pop your goal straight into that. Otherwise, grab a pen and paper. What I want to know, firstly, is which of the 5 commitment phase behaviours do you want to focus on? Right, what have we got? I'm going to go with, I think I need to work on my show of support. So I'm going to set that as my goal for this week. All right, what are our results? Have a look. Oh, lots of people want to support. Okay, measure confidence support. Cool, great. Okay, so it looks like we're pretty confident setting those behavioural goals, which is fantastic to see. All right, so we've chosen our behaviour. Next, we want to see, how many times we're going to do it. When's it going to be done by? Set our parameters. Are we going to do it 3 times out of our next 4 sessions? By when? Are we going to do it 60% of the time over the next month?
certainly can do it 3 times this week is for sure, I know.
Yeah, fantastic. All right. You know what's coming next? The measure. How are we going to measure it? Have we got a little tracker on our computer? Have we got an Excel document that we keep all of these in? We've got the last page in our notebook, sticky note on the side of the computer. How are you going to measure that you're doing this behaviour?
I think I'm going to email my coachees the one thing of support that I'm going to do in the week. I'm going to email that action to them at the end so I can track that. I can measure that.
Absolutely. Yep. You can create a little separate folder in your email account. You can just go back at the end of the week and go, yeah, I've done it 5 times. I said I was only going to do it 3. So yeah, it's always nice to look back and, it can keep a track of it. It really creates that sense of achievement that you're progressing towards a goal. And we know the last one, it's confidence. How confident are you that you're going to achieve this goal?
Yeah.
We want to use the 1 to 10 scale. We want to use the 2 to 9 scale. Doesn't bother me.
It'd be a 10. Those things are the only excuses getting in the way. It'd be very easy to do that.
Yeah.
Good.
Absolutely. All right. Okay. So remember that commitment is all about creating that clear plan of attack on how a team member can proceed. So setting small tactical goals linked to overarching goals we spoke about, the big picture goals that can really help team member immediately focus on these smaller ones. Having commitment that's clear to both the team member and yourselves as coaches, make it easier to find genuine ways to congratulate, reward, praise, and thank people. And it helps keep an eye on inputs rather than the outputs. Okay, so at this point, I'd like to thank all of our coaches for participating in the commitment phase deep dive today. Thank you very much. We've made it to the end. That's great to hear. I trust you're leaving with some new insights on how to set your goals for yourself and for your team members. We have some more deep dive sessions coming up, even though we've gone through all of our main 4 ACDC phases. What we're going to do is jump into putting these into action. Our next one for next month is actually something a little bit different. Because we've finished these key phases, we're going to go straight into a full calibration of the whole ACDC conversation. We're going to listen to a real life coaching session that's been re-recorded and de-identified. And we're going to run a calibration session like we do with our clients. And we're going to have a small panel of analysts with us. So the real grist team that listen to these coaching sessions, they're the experts, they know what they're doing. They're going to be along for the ride. They're going to be there to provide extra tips and insights. You don't have to listen to Dave and I yammering on for another session in a row. So they'll be there to answer all your questions as well.
That'd be great.
Yeah, it's going to be really something different and a real insight into what our clients get. And then after that, in the future months coming up, we're going to touch on some common coaching profile theories. So common, problem points that you as coaches run into. We're going to grab out some behaviours from the ACDC model that can help you tackle those problems in your coaching session. And as always, you'll automatically get an invitation to future webinars. So you'll be kept in the loop for sure. And for the observers that have come along today and not already on the GIST or the ACDC model, please stick around. Dave's going to take us through the platform and the offer. Dave, take it away.
Thanks, Kate. Great job today. That's really insightful and such an important phase of the coaching conversation. So thanks for all your effort in putting that together. Really appreciate it. Okay, so over the next few minutes, what I'm going to do is share with you how you can get your own insights on the ACDC coaching behaviours. So when we assess a coaching conversation, the output ends up being a little bit of a graph like this, and we call it an ACDC journey map. And what it shows is the frequency that you demonstrate each of the ACDC behaviours in your coaching sessions. It's particularly useful when identifying the little things that you can do more effectively as a behavioural coach. In our online platform, coaches can record their own coaching conversations and then assess and track their own behavioural performance over time. And you start to see real patterns emerge. In this example, you can see that the coach, well, they aren't really setting the agendas at all in their coaching sessions. and there's no link between the desired behaviours and the desired outcomes in that desired phase. So, however, they are doing a number of other behaviours really consistently and quite well, but it just starts to show an area of focus. But one of the questions for me becomes, like, how do you know that the coaches are actually assessing themselves accurately to begin with, right? So, there's a couple of ways. The first is to teach coaches how to actually assess and understand the ACDC behaviours to begin with. These monthly webinars aim to actually help coaches to understand each of the behaviours and how to assess them well. And the second way to do this is by adding a third-party assessment. So GRIS online platform allows other leaders or a QA team to assess the quality of the coach's ACDC behaviours as well. So here in this made-up example, you can kind of see how the leader of the coach is assessing the coach's ACDC behaviours and how it's a little bit different. Yeah? And this is when the whole organisation starts to get on the same page as to what great coaching looks like. And when senior leaders and their coaches agree to what great coaching is, that their graphs start to overlap each other, that's when teams and organisations start to deliver real tangible results through their coaching. And these are the kind of results that we've been able to achieve using GRIS tactical leadership frameworks, just like ACDC. Small changes to the way behaviours are coached can make an immediate and significant impacts on performance in a whole range of different measures. So if you'd like to know more, check out our website, or you can take a screenshot of this and contact me directly. But thank you so much for joining us today. And we took a look at the commitment phase, and we really look forward to seeing you again next month when we join Kate and the team to calibrate a real coaching conversation. So thanks very much. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Thanks, Kate.
Thanks, Dave.